are listening to the Up and Under podcast, starting in 3, 2, 1.
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome into the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Join with me, as always, is Zeeshan.
Yo.
Alright, man. Continuing on talking about this weird season, and it is definitely a weird one. Like, how many games have we just had postponed?
A lot.
Too many to count.
Right when we're making this, I swear we've had like 5 games postponed or something, man.
Yeah, this season, because of COVID, is just... COVID sucks, man. Like, this virus is absolutely the worst.
Facts.
But speaking of the worst, we're here to talk about 2 teams in particular that are just struggling mightily. They're tied. Well, actually, one was tied. Now another one is tied for the worst record in the NBA. When honestly, they shouldn't be in that position to begin with. And so that's why in this episode, we want to get to the bottom of it. We want to get to the bottom of what the hell is wrong with both the Toronto Raptors and the Washington Wizards. And it sucks for us being Raptor fans having to say that, like, having to actually come out and say our team sucks.
Yep.
It hurts. And because of that, we're going to save them to the end because we have a lot to say. So we're going to start off with the Washington Wizards in this one. But before that, if you haven't checked out last week's episode, definitely check it out. We basically broke down the over and underachievers so far in the season. We did actually talk about both these 2 teams in there. So if you want to know, get a bit of an idea of what we're going to talk about, definitely check that out if you haven't done so already. But yeah, speaking of the Washington Wizards, the Wizards are currently 3rd last in the Eastern Conference, 1 place above the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah, that's sad, bro.
It's sad, man. Like, that's... Dude, like, and the thing with the Wizards is that nobody really... I don't think we expect them to be, like, this amazing contending, top of the East contending team.
Definitely not.
Especially with Westbrook and Bradley Beal. Now, Bradley Beal has been fantastic to start the season.
He's doing what he did. He's building off of what he did last season, which is playing at an All-NBA rate. Now, obviously, last season was pretty pissed off that he didn't make the All-NBA team. And if it goes at this rate too, he might get snubbed from the All-NBA team again just because of how the Wizards' record is. So, Bradley Beal might not be a happy guy after this season.
Well, I mean, it's just because he's...
Unless he gets traded.
We'll talk about that. But it's the perfect example of a good player being wasted away on a very bad team, terribly run organization. And the first problem with the Washington Wizards... They don't play defense, man. They play 0 defense. They rank 27th in defensive rating. And, if they were bad on both ends of the floor, it wouldn't be that big of an issue because they're like, oh, they just suck everywhere. But the problem is they're 4th in offensive rating. And a lot of that has to do with Bradley Beal. And the even funnier stat, their point differential is negative 0.7.
So they're literally losing games by an average of less than a point, right? 0.7. The problem with that is, again, to your point, their offense is so great. They're ranked the 4th overall offense right now. The problem is their defense is ranked 27th. So when you factor that in, they're literally barely losing games. All because of their defense. If their defense was at a league average rate, they'd be winning multiple games.
Even if they were like the 20th ranked defense in the league, they'd win a lot more of these games.
Literally just 0.7 points better, they would be at an average rate right now. They would be at a 0. But literally 0.7 all due to their defense, whereas their offense is amazing. Now, again, to your point, one thing that's the problem with their offense is that they're way too reliant on Bradley Beal. It's more of
very reliant.
Just give the ball to Bradley Beal. Either get out of the way or make him come off a lot of pin downs, come off screens, and let him create the ball. Get him the ball, and he'll either catch and shoot it, or he'll dribble it and make a shot for himself.
Or he'll create for his teammates. He's an underrated passer. Yeah. He makes the right decision a lot of the time.
And that skill was developed when John Wall and his injuries started happening. They forced the ball to Bradley Beal's hands. And Bradley Beal, as a result, because of the injuries to John Wall, had to develop that facet of his game a lot more, which has led him to becoming a more complete offensive player. And you're seeing the result of how great of a player he is right now. But speaking of the fact of how they use Bradley Beal in the offense and how their whole offense is so reliant on him. It goes back to a bigger issue. And that issue, and we've talked about this for a number of years at this point, right?
Yeah.
The issue is Scott Brooks. Scott Brooks, and Washington's fans will tell you, now that Jim Boylan's gone, Scott Brooks might be the worst coach in the league.
There's no one really.
Who's his competition?
Right now it's really hard to tell.
Yeah, I can't even think of off the top of my head.
I'd like to say Dwayne Casey, but I don't he's not a bad coach.
He's not a bad coach.
Well,
I've heard Ryan Saunders. I think the problem with Ryan Saunders is he's just young. He's inexperienced, right?
Yeah.
He has no experience. Scott Brooks, on the other hand, has experience. He's taken a team to finals. Again, not really. We don't really give him all that much credit.
I mean, when you have Kevin Durant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka,
Derek Fisher,
Kendrick Perkins,
Thabo Sefolosha.
That
was a nice team.
That was a very good team. You have a lot of players, good players on that team, all-star MVP caliber players on that team. So, how much credit do you really give to the coach in that scenario? In Scott Brooks' situation, not much.
Yeah, and back to my point about Scott Brooks, this team can be even better than what they are now. Obviously, their defense is very, very subpar, and I don't know how much you're going to be able to change that. Now, I have no doubt with a better coach in mind, with a better coach in there, they could definitely improve their defense. But in terms of their defense reaching good status, at least for them to try to be average, I think is what the goal needs to be. Because they don't have any defenders on the team. There's not really much defense to go around for any of these players.
Well, I mean, Beal's a decent defender. I mean, again, I don't think he's really trying much.
He can't, bro. He's carrying such a big load.
Exactly. He's carrying such a huge load offensively that, how much effort can this guy really put in on the defensive side of the ball? And back to your point of Scott Brooks just not utilizing players correctly. A perfect example is Danny Avdija. You literally have this guy just standing in the corner and shooting threes. You're not really utilizing his playmaking ability, which is what got him drafted, which made him a highly touted prospect.
Exactly. The main thing about his game that made draft analysts so excited about his game was the prospect of utilizing him as a point forward kind of role, right? Whereas now with Scott Brooks, he's literally got him standing in the corner shooting threes, right? Barely touching the ball. And don't get me wrong, he's really good at that. Right now, he's literally shooting 46% from three. That's definitely going to drop down. He's not that great of a three-point shooter. But it's something he can do. Problem is, that's not what his game is. If you look at even his highlights in Israel, right? He's utilizing his ball handling skills, his playmaking skills. Off of that, he's creating for his team. And not to mention the fact that you need it for this offense. To your point about being so reliant on Bradley Beal, you literally have a playmaker waiting right there in Deni Avdija who can get other guys shots, right? Who can get a guy like Davis Bertans shots.
I was about to bring that up.
Who came out this gate struggling from three. He's picked it up, but he's still shooting the league average rate, which you don't pay him $72 million to shoot at a league average rate, especially when 85% of his shots come from beyond the arc. Well, he's not doing much else.
Think about it this way. If you're going to put any player in the corner, wouldn't you rather put a three-point specialist in Davis Bertans in there and then have your playmaker? Now you have two playmakers in Bradley Beal and Deni Avdija. That's amazing. Now you attract the defensive attention, get a guy like Bertans open, and he's money from three. When you give this guy a clean look, he more likely than not knocks it down. Didn't he lead the league in three-point percentage last year? He led the league in three-point percentage. The guy can shoot. He shoots very well.
Yeah.
And, the Wizards need other players to step up, especially when two of their best players are out with injury right now. Russell Westbrook, he's out with, I think, what is it, a calf injury? It's a quad injury right now. And Thomas Bryant, he tore his ACL. He's out for the year.
Yeah.
Which sucked because he was having a great start to the season. He was the Wizards' second best player behind Beal. And, I think he's going to be greatly missed. But now you're putting all the pressure on Bradley Beal to literally be your offense when you have other talented players on the team. Another name that we should bring up is Rui Hachimura.
Yeah.
The guy showed flashes of being a solid pick, especially when a person like me didn't see much in Rui Hachimura. Zeeshan over here saw something in him. So when you have talented players like that on your team, you need to utilize them. You need these guys to play, engage and be able to step up in these moments.
And not to your point about Rui Hachimura too, he has also not been amazing to start out the regular season. He's doing okay, he's not doing terrible. But the problem is he's shooting 30% from three right now, right? It's not great. But again, that's not really his game. When you have him catching and, spotting up in the offense as much as he does, it's not conducive to a winning offense. Especially, it goes back to the point about not utilizing players' talents correctly. Now, Bradley Beal can do everything on the offensive end, so you can ask him to do everything. But get him some easier shots, get him some more catch and shoot opportunities. Whereas you got him running off of screen so much, or dribbling the ball so much. Get him some easier shots. Get a guy like Deni Avdija. You brought him in to develop him, right? He's still a rookie. You can develop him. So develop him as a point forward. Help him do what he's best at, right? And then Rui Hachimura, who's more of a in between kind of scorer. You saw that in the preseason. But then when it comes to games, he gets more relegated to spot up duty. Obviously, Bradley Beal is your number one option. But, you got to be able to utilize the talent that you have on the team. Now, this isn't absolving Washington's front office, which has done a terrible job, to be real, right?
Yeah. Your biggest move is acquiring Russell Westbrook for John Wall, which I understand why they made that move. I understand that, John Wall wanted a trade, and this is the only way to trade John Wall. But, man, Russell Westbrook is not going to help your young team right now. And I feel bad for Bradley Beal, man. I truly do. Especially when players on big contracts aren't really stepping up right now. And I do want to bring up Davis Bertans, because this guy held out of the bubble to sign a big contract. And I get it. He's a three-point specialist. But as an NBA player, you need to be able to adapt and be able to develop your game. You can't just be one-dimensional. So in the case for Davis Bertans, okay, sure, he's picking up his play as the season progresses, but you can't just be a spot-up three-point shooter. You got to at least be able to handle the ball, or at least put some effort on the defensive end.
And that's the point about Davis Bertans, right? As I said before, he started out the season slow. He's picked it up. He's shooting at a league average rate right now. That's not what you gave him $72 million for, keep in mind. But, there's still a lot of season, so I have no doubt that he'll pick it up even further when it comes to his three-point shooting. The problem is, to your point, he's very one-dimensional. As I talked about, 84% of his shots come from beyond the arc. So he's not doing much else. He's not providing the in-between game. He's not going to the basket. He's not cutting. He's not getting layups for you. So on offense, his main value is as a three-point shooter. And he's one of the best at that for sure, which is why you see his offensive numbers. The team is a 1.2 with him on the court. The problem, to your point, is that they're a negative 2.3 on the defensive end with him.
That's bad. Wow.
That's terrible.
I didn't think it was that bad.
Right? That's bad. So there's literally pretty much a 3-point differential there. He's not helping you on the defensive end. If he's struggling on the offensive end, that's literally one of your biggest contracts right there, one of your biggest players right there. Yeah. Not providing anything at all for you. So it puts even more pressure on a guy like Bradley Beal, right? And I guess that's what our final point, to be honest, right? You kind of got to figure out what you want to do now with Bradley Beal. You're locked into the Russell Westbrook move, right? You did it as Hani said. We talked about it before. We understand why they did it, but that's one thing now you're locked into, right? That's a black hole on your financials.
Which is fine. Westbrook is a decent locker room guy. He's not, and I think Westbrook likes to teach young players and be that.
No, he's a good locker room guy.
Be that that vet for these younger players, which is fine. Okay, you have him on a big contract. So what? I think from the perspective of the Wizards, you need to decide what you want to do. You need to decide, do you want to compete or do you want to tank and rebuild with young talent? Because I think at this point, they need to ask themselves, why are you wasting the prime years of an all-star caliber player, with your current team? You're holding them hostage. You're not even taking phone calls on trade offers for Bradley Beal. You could get a haul for Bradley Beal, especially the way he's playing now. Sell high.
And especially because they need it, man. What are they actually accomplishing with Bradley Beal? You're going to get an 8 seed? Big deal. You're going to get 8 seed in the
If you're lucky to get an 8 seed.
Yeah, you're going to get an 8 seed. You're going to get knocked out. You're going to get bounced in the first round. You legit don't have much of anything on this team, really.
You don't. Again, we brought up your main players. It's Thomas Bryant, Bradley Beal, Rui Hachimura, Deni Avdija, Davis Bertans,
and Russell Westbrook.
That's it. You have Ish Smith, but
Hey, shout out Ish Smith. I actually like him, bro. He's a nice player. But the problem is they don't have much of anything on this team.
Jerome
besides,
Robinson's okay, but again, like
my guy Isaac Bonga, bro.
yeah, Isaac Bonga. Like I don't know. Like who else? Like again, Hal Nato has been a good pickup. I mean, he's been playing pretty decent for them.
Troy Brown also.
Troy Brown.
He's an interesting player. I think you could,
but he needs
maybe
minutes.
you could maybe do something with his contract. But like to our point, it's kind of you're at a crossroads at this point. I know Washington doesn't seem to want to admit it, but you are at a crossroads at this point. You shipped out John Wall already. Yeah. Now it's time for you to decide on what you want to do with Bradley Beal, and there's suitors for him, right? But it depends on how functional of a front office they have, and they really don't, to be honest.
Well, here's one other thing. From our perspective, we think the Wizards should trade Bradley Beal. We think it's time to trade this player.
I think a lot of people think that.
Like, you can't tell me a guy who's averaging close to 35 points a game, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, can shoot the three, can create his own offense, can play off the ball, can play on the ball, can play some decent defense, is not going to get you a haul of picks or prospects. A team is going to give up players. Like, I'll tell you one thing right now. The team we're about to talk about next is the Toronto Raptors. I would love the Raptors to get a player like Bradley Beal, because he solves a lot of the issues that are plaguing this team right now. But here's the problem. The Raptors don't have the assets to make it happen. But you know what? There are other teams that can make it happen. You know what I didn't actually think about? Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Oklahoma City has the young talent. They have the draft capital to make you a very compelling offer for Bradley Beal.
Now, the problem with them is obviously Bradley Beal is not exactly on the timeline. Bradley Beal is still a younger player, but he's not obviously on OKC's timeline. Unless OKC just, used all their assets completely and created a whole new team, a winning team.
They could.
They could do it. But, like, to your other teams that have been rumored in the past is, like, Miami. Obviously, now the Miami situation.
They could do it.
Much like the Raptors situation now got a lot more complicated with the extensions that they had to give out, particularly to Bam Adebayo, right? And that extension kind of...
Miami also doesn't really have the draft capital at the moment because of the fact that they traded a lot of their picks away to make acquisitions. I think one that a lot of teams are talking about is potentially the Lakers making a move.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I don't know how that's going to happen. But
that's just the Hollywood talk, bro.
That's the Hollywood talk. But again, you can get a lot back for Bradley Beal. A team is going to be able to give you a lot for Bradley Beal.
Especially now with the 2021 offseason being as underwhelming now as it once was thought to be. Everyone was always hyped about the 2021 offseason. But now with all the moves that have happened, Anthony Davis, Giannis, LeBron, it's not really a big free agency class anymore at this point.
Yeah. So the Wizards, what's basically wrong with the Wizards is they suck on one end of the floor and they're too reliant on one player. So we'll see what happens with the Washington Wizards. I don't know if they can turn it around. They might be able to when Westbrook gets healthy, but the Wizards are in a tough spot right now. But speaking of a team that's in a very, very unfamiliar spot.
This is rage-inducing for us, bro.
This is so frustrating for us because we haven't seen this in a long-ass time.
Shout out Primo Pasta, bro. This is the last time we've seen the Raptors be this bad.
Man, that brought back a lot of bad memories, man. But yeah, man, the Toronto Raptors have not had a great start to the season. And especially after this past road trip, West Coast road trip, it's been
heartbreaking losses, right?
That is the best way to put it, man. And I think, when you go back, the Raptors could have easily gone to this West Coast road trip and gone 3-1.
Yeah.
In this road trip. I 100% think they could have, so they beat the Sacramento Kings. They lost to Phoenix. Granted,
Phoenix is a good team.
But they were in that game. They let it go in the fourth quarter.
As usual.
We'll get to that. Against Golden State, they played horribly throughout that game until the fourth quarter where they finally came back to life.
Shout out Kyle Lowry for that.
Shout out Kyle Lowry.
But the problem with that is that he didn't play good for the rest of the game.
Exactly. Right? But then you also lose on, again, I'm going to say it, Damian Lee flopped a flop, which again the officiating needs to change in the NBA. There's no way else to put it. Adam Silver, like you can't tell me when a guy kicks his leg out on minimal contact. Now again, okay, there was contact, but you're talking about a play that happened with 7 seconds left of the clock. On a possession where the player faded away. Are you going to tell me they couldn't get a better shot opportunity than that?
The whole refereeing thing is a conversation for another time.
Yeah.
But I think most NBA fans would agree with us when we say there has to be some change with the officiating. There has to be some change to go back to some of the older rules, right? Or not the rules, because the rules haven't changed. It's the way the officiating is changed.
Allow some level of physicality back into the league, because the league's gotten way too soft.
Yeah.
With the amount of 3-point shooting, the flopping, it's too soft.
It's too much.
Like, this is a contact sport. It's a contact league. It's you got to battle. And
even if you want to go back to, for example, like the 2016 finals, which is where a lot of this new officiating came in, right? If you remember those finals, whoever watched those finals, it wasn't exactly legal defense, but the Cavs with J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, were absolutely just bullying Steph Curry. Like, they were bullying him on the defensive end. This guy would try to run around the screen. They would hip check him. They would shove him. They would push him, right? I'm not saying you have to go to that, but at least look at even 5 years ago, right? That level of physicality was allowed. After that finals, they instituted a lot of the Curry rules, as I call it, where all these off-ball fouls and stuff, they start to call these, no touching off-ball, all of these soft rules, where it became...
But you see what that does?
Become too gimmicky at this point.
But you see what that does? That allows players... And again, this is not saying to disrespect Curry in any way, but this allows a guy like Curry to take full advantage of the rules.
It's not his fault.
He's untouchable. You can't touch him. If you can't physically play him, you can't guard him.
Yeah.
You just can't, because he will extend you. He can shoot from anywhere.
Not to mention also the Zaza Pachulia officiating calls at this point, right? You're talking about the leg kicks, the 3-point shooting fouls, right? I swear there's a 3-point shot foul like every other play from. I remember even go back 5 years ago. A foul on a 3-point shot was a rare occurrence, right? At this point, it's like it feels like it happens every 4 plays or something.
And we see it with the Raptors. Kyle Lowry tries to draw that call all the time,
and he doesn't get it, but everyone else.
He doesn't get it half the time. He doesn't get it. But besides the point, the officiating definitely needs to change. But here's back to the point we were talking about originally. The Raptors could have won that game against Golden State. You had the lead. You blew that lead, and allowed Golden State the opportunity to, take advantage of the officiating and win the game. Then against Portland, you lead that game throughout. You have the best start. You play probably your best ball of the season.
Yeah.
Only to give up the lead when it matters most in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. And once again, lose the game by 1 point. Which brings to the question, what the hell is wrong with this team? The first element of that is no bench production. The only player off the Toronto Raptors bench that has given any model of consistency is Chris Boucher.
Yeah.
And
that's surprising to me. For me personally, yeah.
As Raptor fans, we knew Chris was going to get more minutes. We knew Chris was going to get a bigger role.
We know he's talented.
We didn't think he would be this talented.
This good, yeah.
Against Portland, it was a 4-play in the fourth quarter.
Happy belated birthday.
Happy belated birthday to Chris Boucher. But in the fourth quarter, this guy, off an inbounds play with 4 seconds left on the shot clock, calmly steps back, swishes a 3 with Carmelo Anthony right in his face. Now, granted, Carmelo's not a great defender, but that's Chris Boucher shooting that 3.
And that's, I think, the big thing why Chris Boucher has been able to produce at the level he has. The defensive skills were there from last season. Now, obviously, he's cleaned a lot of the stuff up on the defensive end as well. But the main thing is his offensive game last season was the reason he couldn't stay on the floor. Because he can't attack the rim. Obviously, he's a thin guy for the center spot,
Slim
right?
duck, yo.
And then his value was try to be a spot-up shooter. Problem was he shot 28% from 3 last year. This season, he's shooting at a rate of, 44% or whatever crazy rate. That's going to come down, obviously, right? That's not going to... I mean, I hope it doesn't come down, but that's not a sustainable rate.
But
if he can stay at, a 36% average, bro, his value will be off the charts for this team. Especially to your point about everyone else outside of your top 5 guys struggling, right? Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, and Chris Boucher. Everyone outside of that has given you close to nothing.
Yeah, no, that's probably the best way to put it. But here's the thing I want to also point with Chris Boucher. The reason why his percentages have gone up, the shots he's taking are a lot smarter.
Yeah.
He's finishing better at the rim. He's the only one of our bigs that are actually getting to the free throw line because he's taking contact. He's not afraid to go up with it, and he's making a lot of these layups for and ones and whatnot. He's taking the smart threes. He's not like last season he kept forcing threes when he shouldn't have to.
He used to chalk shots, bro.
Chris is not afraid to shoot, which is great, but take the right shots. Which this season he's doing a great job of doing that. But again, we can't just have Chris Boucher being our only player off the bench.
Yeah. To your point about him actually drawing fouls and whatnot, that's the bigger issue we're having right now. Is that it seems like Chris Boucher, he doesn't weigh as much as the other centers, but he's still getting contact. He's still driving in. He's still going in, crashing the boards. He's still moving. He's still being engaged on the offensive end, which is so frustrating that our other centers can't even provide that type of effort. If your shot's not going in, okay, your shot's not going in, but it doesn't excuse the effort and the engagement that you put in. And that brings us to our main point about the season. We have absolutely no centers, right? Chris Boucher is playing our center spot. He should low-key be a power forward because he can't match up with
Chris Boucher or OG Anunoby are our centers, basically.
Or Pascal.
Again, when we signed Aaron Baines, I didn't expect Aaron Baines to be, 13 points a game or shooting 30, 40% from three and whatnot. I didn't expect that with Aaron Baines. But at least give me 80% of what you were doing last season. At least be able to hit layups. Or at least be engaged enough on the defensive end that makes you at least playable. Right?
Side note about your point about Aaron Baines last season, I do remember he also got benched towards the end of the season for Phoenix.
But that's fine. So. But that still doesn't, excuse the fact that he's capable of playing better. You signed a $7 million contract to be a decent rotation player for us. But right now, you're not even in the rotation. Nick Nurse has lost so much faith in you to the point where the last 3 games, you haven't seen
DMP.
Aaron Baines play.
Yeah.
Aaron Baines has not played these past 3 games.
And that's led to Alex Len having to start. And, bro, no offense to Alex Len, he's pretty much a bench warmer in the NBA, right?
Alex Len, again, I'm not really too disappointed in Alex Len because, again, I didn't really expect much of the Alex Len signing. He was going to be a third-string center. The reason why Nick Nurse even started him against Portland was because of Jusuf Nurkic. Because Chris Boucher just can't handle that amount of physicality. And we expected Alex Len to handle it, but clearly he's not able to do that either.
Yeah, Alex Len is, we had no expectations for Alex Len, so for him to be disappointing, it's not really much for us. He wasn't expected to be a big
$2 million
rotation.
contract. It's
exactly.
not like it wasn't a huge investment we put in.
Back to our point about having absolutely no centers on this team besides Chris Boucher, this has led to the rebounding rate and the defensive ratings, both for the Raptors, just tanking, right? The rebounding rates are, the reason why we're down in rebounding is obvious, right? You have Chris Boucher as your center, man. Your rebounding is not going to be good. But, our rebounding has been an issue for the past number of years, not just this year. Obviously, it's worse this year with no Ibaka and no Gasol. But that's been a reoccurring issue pretty much for the past number of years.
Shout out Boucher, man. Man can block everyone, yo.
Yeah. In terms of our defense, the reason having no centers like Ibaka and Marc Gasol for our defense,
it's crazy.
Yeah, it means that we're allowing offenses too many drives. That's number one. And then when they do drive, either they're getting right to the rim or based off of the dribble penetration, they're getting wide open threes, right? And Nick Nurse's philosophy on defense has always been to give up threes. But
aggressively close out.
Yeah.
Because the Raptors have the ability to switch and be so good at closing out on shooters that it was never really an issue, which is why the Raptors had a top 5 defense in the past 2 seasons.
Yeah. And yeah, that's always been the philosophy for Nick Nurse. Him and Mike Budenholzer have been the two guys that have implemented that type of defense. Now the NBA is starting to catch up on that, where a lot more teams are trying to implement that type of defense more. But the problem is, with that defense, the main thing you got to start off with is contain dribble penetration. If you don't contain your dribble penetration, which is what the Raptors are allowing now, they're the 19th ranked defense at this point, where they've been a top 10 defense for the past number of years.
Top 5 even, man.
Yeah. You're allowing dribble penetration. You're going to get wide open threes off of that. Where you're already choosing to give up wide open threes, now you're getting even better quality wide open threes for the opponent, which is why their defense is tanked so much. Now, flipping things over to the offensive end, number one, losing a guy like Serge Ibaka gives us no release valve on the offensive end, right? We've seen for a number of years now, if we needed a bucket or if the Raptors needed a bucket, automatic play. Lowry, Ibaka, pick and roll. Right? So, for the mid-range. His mid-range is money.
Serge has gotten so much hate sometimes, especially in the Raptor fandom, for, not being, not being able to put up consistent numbers. But you know what's funny? We didn't think, nobody expected Ibaka to have this big of an impact for us. Remember, we gave up Terrence Ross for this guy. So we basically didn't give up much of anything, but look who we got. We got a player that was literally, he changes our offense. Yeah. He gives us another option to score. And you know what's funny with Serge? The decision making is so much better than we gave him credit for.
The thing with Serge, he, over the past 2 years, I would say, really improved a lot in terms of what else he could do. His mid-range jumper was always good. He improved that.
The elbow, man.
Yeah, he became an even better three-point shooter. But then to your point, the main thing that improved was his decision-making, his dribbling. Remember what the golden rule for Ibaka was? More than 2 dribbles, that's automatic
turnover.
Right? But he improved that. Last season, I saw him take 4
dribbles.
Four dribbles in possession, bro. He was taking 4 dribbles in possession.
And then he gets a wide open dunk, bro.
Exactly. And his threes also improved. But to our point about having a release valve like Serge Ibaka get us an automatic bucket in the mid-range spot, this has really hurt the Raptors in clutch time, where they've... What was that stat you told me before we were talking?
So the Raptors are 0-5 in games where they've led by 5 points or more.
Exactly.
In the fourth quarter.
So, and you've seen that, right? Every time you get to fourth quarter where it's been clutch time, the Raptors haven't been able to finish. A big reason for that is because you miss the presence of Serge Ibaka being able to get you automatic mid-range jumper.
And being an anchor on the defensive end.
Yeah, whereas now you have no in-between scorers, right? You have either three-point shooters in Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, or you have a cutter in Pascal Siakam. And same with Chris Boucher. Either he's at the rim or he's at the three-point line spotting up. You don't have an in-between scorer. And we know in clutch time and in the playoffs, what becomes the most valuable portion of the offense is the mid-range. And Ibaka's money at that for getting the Raptors buckets. Now you're not going to have that.
Yeah, and again, it just comes back to the point where I think Raptor fans really undersold how valuable Serge Ibaka was to this team. And man, I miss him, man. I seriously, I miss having Serge on this team. But, it also sucks losing Marc Gasol.
Yeah.
Marc Gasol hurts our offense because we lost a high post threat. His passing and his IQ was just so beyond any other player that has been at that center position that it just opened up opportunities. You know how good Norman Powell was last year? It was a lot of that had to do with Marc Gasol. Being able to find him on back cuts and being able to take the load off Norm to create offense. Because when Norm doesn't have to create for himself, he's a good player. Norm can do some things. He can score. When you take a lot of the food off his plate, Norm can finish what he starts.
Yeah.
But
handoffs and stuff too.
Handoffs. And again, now you're forcing Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, and Siakam to have the ball more. You're forcing these guys to create. Now Lowry has always been a creator, but now when Lowry's creating, Fred and Siakam are our only offensive weapons, which again, for a defense, they know you shut these two guys down. It's basically you shut the team down.
There's so many possessions now where I look and our offense just stalls because of the fact that we don't have an outlet like Marc Gasol to just throw the ball to and let him pick apart a defense, right? And the problem with having guys like Kyle Lowry, obviously Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet, their playmaking, I would not say, or their passing is not at the level that Marc Gasol's is.
Well, Kyle has some good IQ. Kyle always makes one.
No,
but
Kyle,
here's the thing:
yeah.
chemistry. We can still see Kyle Lowry looking for Ibaka on that elbow jumper on the pick and pop, but there's nobody there.
Yeah,
and like the bigs aren't playing well enough that Lowry can develop that chemistry with them.
And here's the thing too, right? Another point about Marc Gasol's passing in the high post. If you gave the ball to Marc Gasol in the high post, he's a 7-footer. He can see over the defense. He can scout the defense. He knows what to do. He can see the spots where he has to pass the ball. Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet are good passers, but they're 6 feet.
Yeah.
They're not able to see over the defense that Marc Gasol was able to see over, right? So now your offense becomes so much harder without a guy like Marc Gasol. And I'll say this to all the casual fans out there. Now you're seeing why real fans rated Marc Gasol so much.
So valuable, man.
You're seeing
just
the impact that he had.
The intangibles that he brings to your team is so amazing. But you know what? The one thing I do want to also say, since you brought up the casuals, y'all got to stop hating on Pascal Siakam. This guy started off the season abysmally, and he admitted it himself. He played very bad. But you know what? This road trip, he has turned it around. This guy has been unstoppable. He had his first triple-double the other night against Portland.
Could have had one the other night.
Could have had one against Golden State. And again, a lot of people are going to be, hating on him for missing those 2 potential game winners. First of all, for that Golden State one, I don't blame that one on Pascal because he had 4 seconds left to bring the ball up the court, from the Raptors and to the Warriors end. And he had to put up a shot. And
Not to mention he wasn't the first option on the play.
He wasn't the first option. But you know what? He created some separation. He got a good look. Even against Portland, he was the main guy to go to. But you know what? He was dominating that matchup against Robert Covington all night. The fact that you were able to get in the lane in crunch time. I saw a screenshot earlier today from someone sent this to me. It was a screenshot of that play. When Siakam's going to the basket, there's nobody open. Yep. The paint is this. The only potential option on a play that you can make is maybe giving it to OG in the corner.
Yeah.
But OG's being guarded by Lillard.
Yeah.
So with a few seconds left on the clock, there wasn't many decisions, and he got good looks. They just rimmed out.
And to your point about the Raptors' lack of options, now with the lack of options that you have, right, losing guys like Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, and then obviously previously Kawhi Leonard, who was a great isolation player, without the lack of passing options, to your point, but yesterday, when we were watching the Portland game, right? Who does, for example, a guy like Pascal Siakam have? He has in one corner Stanley Johnson, right? In another corner, Terrence Davis or whatever. Right?
Or hell, at times Yuta Watanabe.
Yeah, the lack of options has led to an increase in isolation play. And we know the Raptors like passing the ball, but this season they're in the bottom half of the league in assists. Because of the fact that now you're more reliant on isolation plays. And sure, Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet, Pascal can do that. But we know Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet are smaller guards, right? They're not gonna have the success that you want from, for example, an isolation bucket getter like Jason Tatum, who's much bigger than them.
Yeah.
Pascal Siakam is still learning his role. He's still trying to figure it out. So you don't have any options in the isolation where you've been forced to play a lot more of that.
And Pascal's not really an ISO type of player. He's a transition player. He's a player that works so well in the transition because he's unstoppable, especially when you can get him inside. Against Portland in particular, when the Raptors ran the offense through Pascal, things just looked so much better. Pascal was dominating the interior. Nobody was able to stop him inside. Then on top of that, creating open opportunities for guys like OG, Kyle, Fred. By the way, shout out Fred VanVleet. He's been amazing this season.
Yeah.
Portland game wasn't really that great, but you know what? He shut down Steph Curry. Yes, he shut down Steph Curry. Yeah. Steph Curry had an off night, but you know what? Fred was chasing him all game.
He did a number on Damian Lillard,
He did a number on Damian Lillard. Again,
the stats won't show it, but Damian Lillard did not have the impact that you wanted.
I was scared of Damian Lillard in that game going off because
he was CJ McCollum went off. That was our problem.
But
yeah, back to the point about having playing much more isolation. Having no options on offense and no isolation type of players has led them to a terrible field goal percentage. Right now, as we're making this episode, they're 27th out of 30 in terms of field goal percentage. You're not going to win games like that. If you're shooting, and
a lot of these are open looks, man. I can't get over that the fact of the matter is the Raptors got to hit open shots.
44%.
Like, that's
good.
As a
You're
team,
not winning
that's
anything.
bad.
You're not winning anything shooting 44%, right? And then again, to our point about like without any options, this West Coast road trip has been better in terms of the team's morale. But as we've seen,
morale and performance.
In the fourth quarter, they still can't do anything. Why? Because they have no closers. They have no isolation type of players.
And I don't think it's on Nick Nurse. Which one thing I want to point out. This is. You can't blame a coach when his players are missing open looks. You're generating the right looks, but you're missing them. And B, you have nobody's playing well. Like, the guys are just making mistakes at times when you don't need them to make mistakes. Like what can you do when you have Terrence Davis and Norman Powell out there on the court, and both of them are making mistakes that rookies would be making? Now, I get it, Terrence Davis is a second-year guy, but Norman Powell, come on, man. You can't be making rookie mistakes when you're a player in the league that's, by the way, looking for a new contract.
Yeah.
I mean, he does have a player option, but
yeah,
that's the thing. And like, it comes down to one thing about this Raptors team. They're missing something. Something is missing on this team. And I think
center for one.
A center is very needed at this point in time because I'm very disappointed in Aaron Baines. But you know what the problem is? We can't trade Baines or Len until February 28th at the minimum.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Everyone, let's just put that in perspective for a second. Let's just repeat that. You can't trade them. So for all the casuals that are saying, trade Baines, trade Baines, trade Baines. League rules, buddy. Right?
And not to mention, any type of like quality player we want to go after, if they're recently signed, we can't trade for them either until the 28th.
Exactly.
So right now we're stuck with what we have. So we can still make we can still make a trade players that have been on the roster that are underperforming. Maybe a Terrence Davis, maybe move a Norman Powell, if for the right price. But something is missing on this team. This team is not balanced. There's too many guards, not enough wings or bigs that we can play in the rotation. So I think personally they do need to make a trade to get some semblance of either a balance on the team or some semblance of a bench threat. Like somebody who can come off the bench and give you something, some production off your bench. And there are options out there, like a couple of names that I think that I personally I've looked into. Derrick Rose, for instance. If you want a guy off the bench, you can go and trade for him right now. He's not going to cost you a ton. Maybe see what if you can grab a guy like a Patty Mills. Maybe see if there's another wing player out there that maybe you can grab.
Speaking of Spurs, I know DeMar DeRozan is a player that a lot of people have wanted. I myself will have to change my stance because I've been against trading for DeMar DeRozan for the last couple of years since he got traded. I'm gonna have to apologize to him and change my stance because of the fact that this season he's been shooting threes and shooting it pretty well. So
contract year.
Yes, I know that. But if he can shoot threes like this, then hey, he's a good player. He is exactly what we need. The problem is contract.
DeMar has always been one thing, or two things actually: instant offense and consistent. DeMar will do DeMar. You're not gonna expect DeMar to not drop.
I was gonna say outside of the playoffs.
Oh well, I mean,
right. You know what?
Let's first make it to the playoffs.
Outside of seeing LeBron.
Okay, but you know what? LeBron's not in the East anymore. But I don't mind trading for DeMar DeRozan either. The problem is his contract. It's huge, $27 million. Mm-hmm. Unless the Raptors give up, Norman Powell, Aaron Baines, Pat McCaw, a couple of draft picks. That's the only way.
Stanley Johnson's contract.
That's the only way you're able to make a trade for DeMar DeRozan work. That trade still wouldn't go through because you need a minimum amount of players on the roster. So while you're giving up 4 roster players and then you're trading for 1, imbalances there.
Yeah. I was also thinking of another name that I thought of recently. I don't know if we'd be able to make it work and what the contract details of that are. But I think if you want to make a win now trade, a perfect player that you could trade for is LaMarcus Aldridge.
I've thought of LaMarcus Aldridge definitely, and I think he would definitely help us. The problem is his age, man.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Win now, right? Like how long? He's on his last year, right?
1-year contract. Yeah,
exactly. So if you want to make,
it's minimal risk.
If you're that desperate to make a win now move, a guy like Marcus Aldridge would not be a bad move to do.
Hey,
Problem is, defensively, it's a bit. But, okay, LaMarcus Aldridge in his time in San Antonio, I will say, has gotten better defensively, especially when they moved him to the center spot because he hasn't had to chase around fours anymore. And also the fact that for his defensive impact, he's not that great defensively, but he's replacing zero, right? So he's replacing a negative in terms of Aaron Baines and Alex Len.
And then at least offensively, at least LaMarcus Aldridge will be a post presence. At least he can hit a mid range jumper.
And he can hit threes at this stage in his career.
He can body people in the post. Like LaMarcus Aldridge, he might be old, but dude can still play. But a couple of last players that I think. Again, I've been on this mentioning this player's name a lot. Victor Oladipo is a player that I think would be an awesome addition for the Raptors. But another one that has been brought to my attention is Miles Turner. Turner.
Was I the one who said that?
You brought it up, but a couple of other people on Twitter have also brought it up to me as well. Miles Turner, although again, he's not one of my favorite players out there on the court. There's one thing for sure. He's young. He's solid defensively.
Good. This season, he's been amazing defensively.
He's been good.
Shout out to the scores piece on... I didn't realize how good he was until I read the scores piece on Miles Turner. He's been elite defensively this year.
Like... Again, Miles Turner, but he can also produce offensively for you as well, which for the Raptors that are just desperately looking for something from that 5 position. Oh, and he's under team control for the next 3 years. He's under contract for 3 years. The only concern I have is, would Indiana want to part ways with what the Raptors would have to give up? The Raptors would have to give up Norman Powell in that trade. Pat McCaw's contract is going in there as well. Probably a first round pick.
Stanley Johnson's 5 on his? $5 million?
Yeah, but I wouldn't trade Stanley. Because that's the thing. If you trade for Miles Turner, you lose bench.
Yeah. We don't have much of bench right now.
That's my thing. I'd rather trade for a guy like Oladipo because at least then I can move one of my starters to the bench and at least cover up some of that production issue.
Now, that also doesn't account for the fact of what Indiana will want.
That's the other question.
With Miles Turner playing so well and Victor Oladipo looking a lot like his pre-injury self, Indiana might just say, "Screw it, we'll go all in this year," right?
Yeah. Again, it's an unlikely trade to happen. I wish it would happen, but again, I feel like the Raptors need to make an under the radar move to fix this team. They need to get into a rhythm, man. And it's come down to what we've been saying about this team since last week. This is a good team playing below their capabilities. They're way better than this, and they've shown it in spurts that they're a team that can keep up with anybody in the league. It's all about just playing well and getting those wins.
And it's about either you get some trades in, or I think I was telling Hani this too. Over the next 10 games, you go 2-8, which is what currently they've been doing. You go 2-8 over the next 10 games. I think their season's over. Because you have to remember, right now, this season, it's 72 games. And, we don't even know if it's going to be 72 games with everything that's going on right now, too, right?
Yeah.
So...
I mean, everyone knows, I'm completely against a tank job for...
Fade for Cade.
For a team that is in the position that the Raptors are in. I just despise tanking, but... We might have to do what the Warriors did, and lose for a year only to retool and, reestablish a direction if things continue in the trend that had been going in. But there are positive signs with the Raptors. It's just about making those minor adjustments. It's still early. I think they can still turn it around. I mean, at least I hope they can still turn it around. But again, it just comes down to a good team just playing bad.
And one final point before we move on. One thing that is going to affect everything as well is the fact that Masai Ujiri, his contract is also going to be up. Now, MLSE has reportedly been trying to sign him, but he can do whatever he wants to do.
Masai
he has all
wants
the
to
power.
test the market right now, and I don't blame him. But my one thing I want to mention to Masai is where else do you want to go? What else do you want to do in your career? You already established yourself as one of the best executives in the world. What do you want to do?
And also, he's talked about how his end goal, pretty much after his bigger goal, is to be able to make his Africa, like his impact in Africa and all the programs and whatnot that he does in Africa. Like that's his bigger goal outside of the NBA. For us, it's like, where are you gonna get a better opportunity to make your impact and do what you want to do outside of Toronto, right?
I mean, you're in Canada. You're in a global country. You're in a country that supports immigration and supports being a global country.
Most diverse. You're literally in the most diverse city in the world.
Exactly. So I don't know. It's definitely interesting to see what happens with Masai Ujiri. But you know what? First and foremost, the Raptors need to get their shit together and start playing better.
Not to mention, there's not many ownership groups better than MLSE also.
Yeah.
Right.
MLSE. I mean, they're
not
loaded.
to mention they're low. Yeah.
They're loaded with,
I was just gonna say that
they're loaded with money, man. I mean, the
loaded.
hockey pays, man, up here in Canada.
Yeah.
So yeah. So those were the two teams that we wanted to answer the question, what is wrong with them? Let us know what you guys think. Do you guys agree or disagree with what we're saying? What would you do to fix these two teams? Let us know. Moving on to the up and under segment for this week. A couple of major news in the NBA. The first of which, are you up or under on the new NBA health guidelines amid the spike in cases? Now there has been a lot of cases of COVID in the NBA. That's caused teams, because of contact tracing, to not even have enough players to play games. For instance, the Boston Celtics haven't played since early last week. Miami hasn't played.
I mean, when Philly last played, they had legit they only had 8 players. They were playing
Dwight at point guard, yo.
Yeah, Dwight at point guard, bro. Like,
yeah. So the NBA introduced new health guidelines to help combat this. The first one is they're only allowing players to fist bump or elbow bump, after games. So you know how players used to high five each other. That one makes the least amount of sense to me, because you're already you're playing a contact sport for 48 minutes, but you're not allowed to high five a guy. What about your teammates? Aren't you high fiving them? What about your pickup?
They're like, yo, after 1 minute after a game, no high fives, bro. There's a free Corona pass for 48 minutes during the game, and then
plus all the guys are tested.
Yo, right when the buzzer sounds, Corona's back in the arena, bro.
Yeah,
it makes no sense.
That didn't make any sense. Second one is mandatory masks on the sidelines. Okay, I mean, but either
kind of also.
I mean, they're all tested, and they're all they wouldn't be there if they're not tested. But okay, you need to stay in your in-market bubble, which basically means that if you're at home, you don't really leave your house unless it's for exercise or team activities. Which I'm assuming,
and even those are limited at this
point. I'm
point.
assuming it's practice, or essential things to go out of your house for. Otherwise, you're staying at home. If you're away, you're not really leaving the hotel unless it's for team activities. Once again, unless it's for
emergency
essential stuff. But if you're at the hotel, the team will accommodate you in that regard. So there's that. You can only interact with your team and families. You can't you shouldn't be socializing or interacting with anybody outside of that, which I think is fair.
That's fair.
That's fair. And they're gonna increase COVID testing to get players back on the court.
So I think the rule was before 2 negatives in a row or whatever. Apparently, I think I saw they increased it, to 5 or something like that. Either way, they've increased all the stipulations and whatnot. They've tightened a lot of the rules and whatnot for around this whole COVID thing, which I understand why they did it, and I support them trying to make their regular season safer. But some of these are kind of just ridiculous. We talked about the only fist bumping and elbow bumping.
That one doesn't make sense.
Either and that makes no sense too, because bro, you're still touching. Right? Yeah. What is the point of that? I don't understand the point behind the rule.
Even the coaches wearing face masks, at least the head coach, that to me is
even everyone on the sidelines wearing masks, the players having to wear masks. Bro, they were just on the court without wearing masks. Them coming onto a bench is gonna make a difference.
The logic doesn't make a ton of sense there, and
it's more of I think making rules for the sake of making rules.
Obviously a lot of it's to show the health committees and stuff that
exactly.
They are following protocol, because they will get fined if they don't. I mean, at least in Canada, that's a big thing. In the U.S., I'm not really sure anymore with what they got going on in their government. But yeah, man, some of these just don't make any sense. But I get it; they need to do something. But one thing I do want to point out, all the major sports leagues, like the MLB and the NFL, had hiccups of cases, to start the season. Then everything kind of calmed down, and then everything went smooth sailing. So I think a similar trajectory is in line for the NBA.
Hopefully. And again, this all depends on what goes on outside of the NBA too, right? Yeah. And then I think the NBA is going to have to look into possibly doing a bubble if they want to get to the playoffs.
Playoffs need to be a bubble.
Playoffs will have to be in a bubble. I don't see any other way.
It just doesn't make sense.
Unless this whole vaccine thing just goes crazy and they have enough vaccines to vaccinate everyone. And even then, there's a lot.
Works.
And yeah, exactly. There's already a lot of opposition to it. There's a lot of issues going on surrounding that too. So there's a lot of things that need to happen for the NBA to have a successful season and then to finish the season successfully in the current state that they're in, which I don't think will happen. They're going to have to change something and possibly, for example, like as we said, make a playoff bubble. So, it's a lot of issues, but
COVID sucks.
I mean, that's where the world is at right now. That's where businesses are at. That's where society is at right now. So, you can't really do nothing about it. Yeah. Next up, are you up or under on, apparently a few days ago, John Collins reportedly in a team meeting aired his frustrations about how Trae Young was running the offense?
I'm slightly up on this one just because of the fact that I think it's because of my personal stance on Trae Young. Now, again, he's a very good player. Very, very good player. Very talented player. But I think a lot of his game reminds me a lot of what Steph Curry does in the sense that he's the offense. And when that means that other guys on the team have to take a step back. And especially considering that John Collins is on the verge of exploding and becoming that big-time player. Now that you have to share your opportunities with not only Trae Young, you have to share it with Bogdanovich. There is Clint Capella who needs his touches. Now Rondo. There's now a bunch of guys on this team. Now you have DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Huerter. There's a lot of guys on this team who deserves touches on this team.
And then, to your point about him, him being the offense. Number one, he's a lot more on the ball than Steph Curry is, right?
Yeah.
That's to your comparison. But number two, he needed to be the offense for when he was drafted, right? When he was drafted and he came to the Hawks were a garbage team. He had to be the entire offense.
Yeah.
Now with all the weapons that you just named and all the new players, he doesn't have to take that role anymore. I think as him, he has to try to acclimate to the new faces that they have.
He's a better playmaker than a lot of people give him credit for, especially
he's one of the best playmakers already.
He's a very good playmaker, so I think he should lean more towards that. But here's the other thing, the thing that I kind of hate a lot about what Steph Curry did to the league. He just chucks up threes.
Well, I mean,
he doesn't chuck them up, but you know what's funny is that when he's taking a 35-foot shot, now, okay, if he can make that shot, fine, but is that
he makes it.
Is that really the most effective shot to take?
And then, final point is about John Collins. Some of the reasons why he's pissed off. Number one, this is a contract season for John Collins, right? He tried to bank on the fact that he was going to get some big money in this offseason. He has to be able to play great this season, which is where I think a lot of his anger comes from, is the stress that he's having from needing to perform well to get that big contract.
Because he got that suspension last year.
Exactly. And then, so it is a contract year for him. The issue with that is also the fact that Atlanta's been openly shopping him because of the fact that they just don't think he's worth the money.
Wow.
And I don't see... I mean, I understand where they're coming from in terms of the fact that his offensive game, he can shoot threes and he can attack the rim. But here's the thing. He's undersized for his position, and defensively, he's garbage. No offense. He's not good defensively. So you're giving up that many points on the defensive end, and then you're a good offensive player, but you're not able to replace what you give up on the defensive end. Not to mention the fact that Atlanta already has a one negative defender in the lineup with Trae Young. You can't have two negative defenders in the lineup, otherwise you're not going to win. And who are they going to take? Trae Young or John Collins? Easy choice. So
you got to take Trae Young.
Yeah, exactly. So John Collins knows his time is ticking, and he's in a very critical situation for his career right now. So I think this is also where a lot of his frustrations come from in terms of his need to be able to perform well and the circumstances surrounding his year for him. So either way, it'll be interesting, and I think Atlanta's a very interesting team. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk about them.
I mean, they're winning.
Yeah,
they're winning some games. They're beating some quality teams. So we'll see what happens with Atlanta. With that, that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the show on all the various podcasting platforms. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, YouTube. Basically, wherever you can find a podcast, you can find us with the Up and Under Podcast. Also, follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at UpLetterNUnderPodcast, Facebook.com/Up and Under Podcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode or a reaction to news as they occur. Also, check out our website, UpAndUnderPodcast.com. It's our central hub for the show. If you want to read blog posts about every single episode, or even want to be able to centralize where you find us online, definitely check us out. It's a good place to go to find out more about the show. And yeah, man, the season's off to a weird start, man. Hopefully we get to a playoffs, man. But
yeah, at this point, I don't even know. Like, we hope at this point we even get to a playoffs. To be honest.
Yeah, man, things have been weird, but you know what? Ball's still happening, so we'll keep you guys posted. But with that, that concludes this week's episode. We see you guys on the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.